Hey, I'm here with Megan Killorn, and today we wanted to talk about teacher development and elevating your teaching. Megan is one of our managers and also one of our senior teachers at Warrior One Yoga. She also is head of teacher development.
That's right. So I teach across all three studios. I have been working with Warrior One in the management team for 3 years now. And at the moment, my role is hiring, teacher development, coordinating all the schedules, and making sure that there's a teacher teaching every class.
Very important stuff.
Very important stuff.
Yeah, so we just wanted to go over a couple points. And one of the roles that you do is hiring new teachers. And in that process, we do teacher trials. And something we've noticed, there's a lot of points that I myself am always working on. And something we ask all of the teachers that we trial and our teachers at the studio to constantly kind of try and consider and stay on top of. There are so many roles or hats you wear as a yoga teacher. You're multitasking and doing a lot of different things. So to kind of have a conscious consideration about these processes and really being intentional with what you do, I think is the way to start to cultivate an amazing studio experience for your clients and students.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the main things we say to teachers is that the check-in and the check-out is almost important as your class itself. So from the moment a student walks into the studio, what is their experience from, the Palo Santo or the incense you have burning, the music you have playing, to how you greet them at the front desk. I always try to say the person's name back to them so that they feel seen and you know their name. It also helps during the class if you're directing a cue at them, that you'll remember their name, but also smiling at check-in, asking them how their practices are going, or if they're a regular member, how they're enjoying being at the studio. Are they coming regularly? Whose classes are they liking? Just making them feel like they're part of your community and wanting to come back towards your class because they have this connection with you. And then at checkout, I find for me, checkout is maybe more important than the check-in. I try and stand closer to the door so that as students are leaving, I'm saying good night or have a good day or sleep well. How is your class? What do you want to do next week? And making them again feel as though that they are being seen and heard and part of the community, not just coming into the studio and leaving as a person on their own singularly.
That's huge. I think what you stated is so important. That whole idea is you want to make people feel seen and that they're part of it. Not like they're just showing up, but that you care. Ultimately, I think that's it. Just this point of contact to show that you care. And yoga truly is customer service role. And so the way you show up, the way you present yourself, the way you're dressed, the way you hold yourself, your expression, all of these things are so vital and important. And I think sometimes you can forget how you have been made to feel as you come into a studio. And I think once you've had a few amazing experiences, starting to remember how that person made you feel as you did your check-in and starting to emulate that for yourself. I think it's not that hard to replicate, and to be intentional with it is really special.
Nothing's worse than walking into the studio and the teacher barely looks at you and goes, gotcha.
Yeah, I agree. That's not very nice.
No, it's not.
No. When they light up and smile and show that like they're stoked to see you, that's the difference.
Yeah.
And you want to come back to that experience.
Good vibes from the start.
Yes. I think next up is to be prepared, to be really intentional with what you are going to share as a teacher when you are showing up to the studio and teaching your classes. There's so many kind of aspects of that. I think class sequencing and class planning is a whole nother realm or universe that we could dive into. But as a general sort of idea or general sort of ideas, what do you think we could start to implement here?
I think it's good to have a motto for who you are as a teacher. And that way you can base your classes off of that. For example, I like to teach in a way, and my motto, I should say, is I help people move better and breathe better so that they feel better and then live better. So all of my classes are developed around that. I know in your teaching, you often like to challenge people and get them to try new things. Am I correct? Yeah. So that's what people expect when they go to your class. They expect to be challenged. And it's a good idea to have your motto or intention clear and how you're then preparing your classes, preparing your playlists, which are really important, and, sequencing in alignment to who you want to be as a teacher and how you want to show up for your students. Hot tip is have a motto or have your little, what's the word I'm looking for?
Sankalpa as a teacher.
Yeah.
Intention, to teach with intention. That's beautiful. I've never thought of it as a motto or kind of a mission statement, but that's a really, really unique way.
Yeah, awesome. And then within being prepared is also preparing people's body correctly. And at Warrior One, we want all of our teachers to start with wrist prep in some capacity, because most people don't use their wrists the way they do in yoga and weight load, bear weight through their hands and through their arms. So it's really important to prepare their bodies for that at the beginning of class, whether it's 30 seconds or a minute, just really intentionally stretching into the wrists.
It's so important. Yeah. Especially people come from their busy day, not bearing weight on their hands most of the day whatsoever, just kind of using devices, getting through life, and then put all your weight in a downward facing dog and do these things. So yeah, I agree. Wrist prep is so vital. So very vital. Another clear point is to be sure that you are teaching true to the class style that you're teaching. So if you're teaching a slow flow class, make sure that your sequence and the class you're offering is actually a slow flow. If you're teaching a vinyasa class, teach a vinyasa class.
Yeah.
I think consistency and expectations need to really be important when you're a teacher. If someone is showing up to a vinyasa class, think about your experience. If you showed up to a vinyasa class and it was yin, you wouldn't be too stoked. So to really teach true to this class style of what is being offered is another clear point to really make sure that you're hitting.
So important. And that doesn't mean that slow has to be soft. It can be strong still, but that you're moving slowly and transitioning slowly so people have the time to get through the poses, and also that the playlist is in alignment with the class style. You don't want to be in a vinyasa class with yin music, soft classical music in the background. You want it to be energizing the class, and you want it to grow to a peak just like you might be within your class. So considering how the playlist is going and not landing in Shavasana with some real doof music happening, which
Sometimes
happened recently to me in somebody's class. And it's not the environment or experience that you're trying to create. And that all comes down to your preparation.
Yeah, I think there are some amazing teachers, and I've chatted to them, and they're like, I just walk in and I feel it, and it comes to me. Personally, that's not me. If I want to create a really intentional experience, I'm going to embody it. I'll practice it in my own body, actually know exactly kind of what the intention is, where I want people's focus to be, how they're breathing, what my theme is, what my playlist is. And until I have created something like that, I don't really like to go out into the wild without a bit of prep. You can totally create awesome classes, but I think to do that consistently then becomes very difficult. You'll have some good ones, you'll have some okay ones, you'll have some that are amiss. But if you actually are spending time and practicing on your mat, thinking about all these different elements, your intro, your outro, your playlist, teaching to the class style, being, intentional with your preparation for the body, all these little pieces start to create an amazing experience.
Absolutely. So in these teacher trials, or we like to call them mentors when we bring new teachers on, the thing that we say the most to these teachers at Warrior One, and often to our teachers in classes as well with cueing, is to really personalize the practice to the students. So instead of speaking generally to the room and saying, put the left hand down or grab those big toes, we tell the teachers to use your, or if you're trying to create more of a community vibe, our or we, or just nothing at all. Left hand down, right arm up, not the left hand down, the right arm up.
Yeah, I think it's subtle, but it makes a world of difference. And if you close your eyes, it literally feels as if the teacher is talking directly to you. And even though you are, as a teacher, leading a group experience, unless you are teaching privately, you want to start to create that vibe. It feels so nice. And it is so simple if you eliminate the words this, that, those, and often the word the. If you can replace those words for you or yours, or as you said, eliminate the you, yours, this, that, and just say very direct cueing, it makes the experience so much more concise. As a teacher, it saves your breath and effort, and you get people there more efficiently. It's less confusing, it's direct. I think it's so key. Such a simple switch, but amazing difference that it creates. I agree with that 100%.
Also with cueing would be taking out some words that are just filler words or crutch words. Beautiful, just. How awful is the word just? Just do this, just do that.
I used to always say, now we're gonna, next we're gonna. And I realized it doesn't matter, we're just gonna do it.
Yeah.
Say the thing. And I think we all have points, some beautiful, everything becomes beautiful. It's kind of hilarious, but it loses its potency. And often I've been in classes and the teacher is actually looking at nothing, the ceiling or the floor, and they're beautiful. And I'm like, what is the floor? So to be aware that we all have these habits. It's so easy to go on autopilot, but if you're gonna give compliments, actually be looking at a person, actually see something that you like, that you think is beautiful, and then use it.
Yeah. And on that, another great teaching tip is to have clear, succinct cues.
Yes.
So action verbs, place your hand, put your foot, reach up, not placing your foot, stepping through, eliminating any ing so you're not inging people to death.
Turning, stepping, rotating, folding, fold forward. Yeah. A little more clear and concise.
More space as well for the students, that white space that allows the cues to actually settle rather than to keep going and going and going and inging and inging and inging.
So it's so true. And it gives you some space to actually breathe and to notice instead of having to constantly cue, which is really important. Talking about cueing, at Warrior One and in our teacher training, we really use something we call the 3 A's. Announce, align, and add. And so I think this is a really good system, again, for consistency for your students and for yourself as a plan how to cue pretty much every pose. So it is breath, pose name, unless a directional cue is more important. And then you're aligning. And if there is space, you add to that. So announce, align, and add. 3 A's really give you a clear framework that you can then stick to and follow. And as a teacher, that's easy to stick to, makes it really clear for your teaching. But as a student listening, it makes it so much nicer. And you're not ever kind of held in space waiting. I don't know if you've been in sequence and you're like, what's next? Just say the pose so I can do the thing. And then it happens. You're like, okay, there we go. So I think it eliminates any lag time. And yeah, it's really, really, really simple, but straightforward. What do you think?
Yeah, it cleans up your cueing and makes it easier for you to consistently cue. So for example, you would say, inhale, low lunge, arms reach up, scissor your inner thighs, or add in whatever other anatomical cue you can really get people into their bodies. I personally like to teach to the body a lot because students are embodied. And if you're giving them cues to feel, then there's less room for them to think as well because they're really focusing on what they're doing. And that is what yoga is about, right? It's being mindfully in the moment, in your body with your breath.
Yeah, it's that right there is huge. That's one of the yoga's greatest tools. It gets us out of our fluctuating mind, the vrittis, and into a felt sense of experience into the present moment. And so it's so vital that we allow people space to have that experience. So important. You can't do that if you're always talking and they're always thinking. It needs to be embodied. So I think it's really vital to have that white space in a yoga class. Another point, and something I'm always working on, is enunciation and intonating my words clearly, using my tone and cadence to really lead the energy of the class. And sometimes, the class starts getting tired. You're to a strong portion of the class. You don't want to be talking soft and mellow. You need action. You're asking people to move, to breathe. And simply by changing your tone and cadence, instantly it gives that power behind your words.
Absolutely. So, for example, reach up, up, up. Or how else would you use that?
Ground dog. No, but yeah, just like adding some tone can really
Carrying
change
the energy of the class through your voice is very important. And also, succinct cueing doesn't only involve cutting out words. It also involves using really deliberate words, really descriptive words. A hot tip that I give a lot of teachers when I go to their class and give them feedback is to have a note or a page in their journal where when they go to other teachers' classes, they write down words that they like, that they use, so that they can continue to evolve their vocabulary themselves. Because sometimes you feel like you're on repeat, saying the same thing over and over, because yoga is a bit repetitive. That is part of the practice, the mindfulness and finding your flow.
So true. And sometimes those little words, just like you've heard the same thing described in a million ways, and suddenly someone asks you to do it in a specific way, and you're like, it lands so differently. I remember a good friend of mine asked me to pluck my foot off the floor. And, and like, it creates an image. It's a very specific way of moving. It's not just flinging things around. It's very deliberate and intentional. So I think if you can start to create this with your language, it creates a beautiful class experience.
Absolutely.
It's really special.
Absolutely. Another thing that we really ask our teachers to do is to instruct people through their vinyasas. Just saying, take your vinyasa actually makes no sense because the class itself is a vinyasa. You're asking people to move through some really challenging transitions from a high plank through chaturanga to a backbend of their choice, upward dog or cobra, to downward facing dog. And there's a lot of room for error in there. And if you're telling people just to go for it and do their thing, you're not being the teacher. That is your role. That's your job.
I agree. I think at the very minimum, you should at least do the very first one, really instructive the quality of movement you're asking of your students. And personally, I like to switch it up because I notice so many people when they do their vinyasa, if they've done a traditional style, they go into autopilot. And I'm like, no, slow down. Let's do a full push-up today. Or instead of going straight from chaturanga to up dog, we'll go push up, child's pose, deload your shoulders, and then up dog. Or just variations that have really clear intentions. One, for variety and different movements, the spice of life, but to protect people and to teach them to move differently. And so I think it's almost a disservice to just tell the class to take your vinyasa. You have this opportunity to lead people through a beautiful movement and a beautiful sequence of movements that could be kind of or amazing. And so I love that. Make sure that you're asking people to move specifically. Vinyasa is to place and arrange in a very specific, intentional way. So it doesn't make sense just to say, take your vinyasa. Tell them how you want to do it. Or cue them through the whole thing.
Or give them really impactful cues within what they're doing. Very specific ones as they're moving.
So if you are a newer teacher or a senior teacher and these points resonated, we wanted to run through them with you once again. And they were:
your check-in and check-out is very important to your class.
Vital.
Just as important as the class itself.
I agree.
Being prepared, also important. Being prepared with your sequence, your playlists, and your intentions for the class.
How you present yourself and how you show up.
Your cueing, being concise and direct, using action verbs and beautiful languaging that doesn't include filler words, too many ings, or those, that, or the.
Yeah, eliminating this, that, and those, and trading them for you or yours. And then crutch words, trying to avoid crutch words or repetitive words like beautiful, nice, things like that, unless you're actually looking at something that's beautiful and nice. I mean, by all means, give people compliments.
Finding a format for how you're cueing, and we suggest breath, announce, align, add, and consistently use that throughout your class.
Yeah. Don't like do that for half and then switch up the format. Keep it consistent.
And the class energy. So carrying the class throughout the class through how you're using your voice and creating space with your languaging as well and your cueing.
And cueing people through vinyasas, not letting them go freestyle. Of course, you can set them up and then let them go once you've set them up. But I think to be intentional and truly be of service to your students, to teach them and ask them exactly what you want out of them.
I hope these points have inspired your teaching and will help you grow and evolve as a teacher.
We hope to see you in studio and on the mat really soon. Aloha.